Hi there, how you doing? I hope you're good. I hope you're great because I am. Something that has been on my mind lately has been the gratitude that I have for the people that are around me. I have a small yet close circle of friends that I really feel are genuinely there for me and genuinely look out for my well-being. I have family that through ups and downs has grown closer together, and I find myself being in the relationship that has probably been the best for me in terms of my mental health and my well-being and my general growth and spiritual state as a person. And that got me to think that that hasn't always been the case, regardless of the type of relationships, because we're not just talking about romantic relationships here. It's also family relationships. It's also platonic relationships. For a very long time, I found myself being stuck in the same patterns that a lot of us are still finding ourselves experiencing to this day. And most of the times, it's against our wishes, it's against our greatest desires to be in relationships like that and to have people surrounding us that bring out certain energies in us and in our lives. And all of that just made me realize that the people that I have around me today didn't just pop up magically. And from all of the people that were once around me, the people that have now stayed didn't just get funneled into my life by luck. I had to work towards healing a lot of relationships, particularly my relationship with myself, in order to develop the opportunity to heal these other relationships and to attract the right people into my life. As someone who has spent most of their life dealing with the anxious attachment style and now nearly the same amount of time rediscovering security, I have to say the bigger part of the healing journey is not pretty. Realizing that there's something that's not very functional with the way you relate to other people or the types of people you seek to have around you isn't easy. And that's because we are, in a large portion, who we connect with. I cannot count the amounts of times that I've heard you are who surrounds you, or you can judge a person's character by who they have around them. I know it sounds super arbitrary and like it could have a lot of gray areas, but a lot of times it really just applies like that, honestly. As humans, we crave connection, and in some cases where healthy connections was never really shown to us in our upbringing, it wasn't modeled to us, we can end up seeking these connections in the wrong places. We surround ourselves with the wrong people, not necessarily because they are bad and we want bad, but because there is a certain comfort and familiarity that they might bring, a belief that our ego has instilled in us. So the people that surround you often do end up having that big of an influence on you. And it's just our nature to want to belong to the group that surrounds us. So when I say finding better connections or creating healthier ones or finding your tribe, it's not about hopping on the I'm so tough, I don't need anyone, and I'm different than everybody else train. Because just stop. Just stop. We're not in middle school anymore. Caring isn't uncool. Finding your tribe and finding healthier connections, it's really about finding whose influence you wouldn't mind, and even further, you would invite to have an influence on you. And that's why you may have heard, and if you haven't heard it, you're hearing it here first, that if your relationships and the pattern you keep experiencing in your relationships isn't working for you, then you need to look outside the box and you need to seek unfamiliar experiences or people, or just stop chasing for that familiarity, because sometimes our familiar isn't necessarily what is good for us or what we should be longing for in a connection to another human being. And if you think about the experience of seeking connections with an anxious attachment style, the most common experience ends up being seeking people who are going to allow you to recreate the experience of the runner and the chaser. If you don't know what that is, it's those dynamics in which you find yourself doing so much and doing all these acts of service and taking all of these actions to prove to somebody why you are worth the time, the investment, the commitment, but it never feels like enough because that person always keeps leaving that gap. You take a step forward to create proximity and closing the gap, but then they take a step back and open the gap again. And that just keeps going and going and going and going. And it always feels like whatever you do isn't enough to close that gap. You need to continue seeking clarity and reassurance to relieve that anxiety, but at the same time, you keep chasing somebody who is deliberately keeping that gap open and subconsciously reassuring your ego that whatever I do isn't enough. Whatever I have done to close that gap wasn't enough. I need to top it up. So you keep chasing. You need to realize that it's not just on you. That constant chase reaffirms that ego belief that something must be wrong with you, that you continuously experience that abandonment, and that you need to keep trying to almost sell yourself, almost like you're convincing yourself of your worth as well. And if they can't buy the charade, neither can you. This often happens with people with avoidant tendencies because they are the perfect opposite to keep recreating that dynamic with. They will keep taking the step back to keep the gap open, and they will continue to reaffirm this way of seeing ourselves and that ego that our belief has created familiarity around. And that's the pattern that needs to be broken. Seeking people that need to be chased, or seeking constant highs and lows and the adrenaline rush of it all. It didn't occur to me until several years of doing things like shadow work and deconstructing my patterns of, again, all kinds of relationships, not just romantic. This also includes platonic relationships, family relationships, my relationship with myself, down to my upbringing, the people and things that modeled how relationships should be to me. And it didn't occur to me until then that I was seeing relationships as tools to achieve personal completion and fulfillment. In other words, as a way to feel whole within myself. Like the relationships around me were supposed to be the things that complete me as a person. And it took years because doing this work is a process. You can't just jump into these epiphanies without first being comfortable with being uncomfortable, with being vulnerable with yourself and your thoughts, without asking yourself the hard questions and answering honestly, without starting to work on your self-esteem and your sense of self, and accepting that sometimes your truth will be ugly, and that doesn't have to be a reflection of you. It wasn't working in all of these aspects that I could start realizing that perhaps I do have innate value as myself. Maybe I am innately complete as a person, where I can at least always work towards being, even if I don't mentally believe it. The progress is still there. Like I said, it's a process. It can't be overnight, and it can't come to us all at the same time. You will still have to go through some trial and error, because even after understanding all of this, you still have to apply it to the real world. And that is a lot harder when you try to translate your thoughts into action, the theory that you learn into practice. And I think I talked about this in 2 of my videos on Instagram, in the Advice from Your Shadow Work Bestie series, where I talked about the passive and active sides of shadow work, and how one is more theory based, and then you have to apply it in the practice in action. So if you're interested in knowing more about that, go check out those videos on my account. But it's hard, but it's not impossible. Before my current relationship, I took a moment after another error in the trials and errors to actually look at how I was moving and how I was applying my theory in practice, how I was carrying myself and presenting myself, and especially if these actually matched what I believed, if they went into agreement with what I wanted and what I was aiming for. I had to rediscover what my morals even were, what my aims were. And this is exactly what I did. I reevaluated my morals, goals, standards, and boundaries. I reevaluated what I offered and what I seeked in return. Not only that, but also which ones of these things were non-negotiables and which ones I was okay with being works in progress. And I rediscovered my confidence and realigned my physical actions with my beliefs to the best of my abilities with every situation that came my way. So basically, I embodied the version of myself that already had all of these things that I aimed for. I embodied the version of myself that was already in the position of receiving my highest self, my inner divinity, hence the divine body. And it wasn't just pretending to be her, I was her. I am her. And the her is forever a work in progress because she's not meant to be perfect. She's not meant to be a finished project because no one is. But she surely knows who she is, what she stands for, where she stands, and what she will open paths to come her way. Long story short, the one thing that changed the way I relate to other people. Once again, this applies to every kind of relationship that we have in this human experience, was finding out who I am, what I want, what I give, and what I want to receive, and then stand by it. I hope this reaches whoever needed to hear this. And if you have any thoughts, if you have any suggestions or questions, if you resonated with this and have experienced this, let me know in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video.